How you doing, folks? I'm James. This is Steven, Slinger Sports, coming to you again this year with Big 12 football coverage. And today we're at the Omni Hotel in Dallas, where the first day of Big 12 Media Days is taking place. And Steve, what was your impression coming into today after what you've seen?
Well, they kind of started off with a bang. Bob Bowlesby started off the Media Day with announcing that the Big 12 Conference would be the first to limit every team to 2 contact days for the week, and that does include game days. That means basically 1 practice, you can have full pads, go at it. And he said he wanted to be groundbreaking on the concussion test, protect each player. They feel that's something they need to put a stranglehold on and protect the players. And well, obviously this had got everyone up in a stir, talk about how you're going to have practice time, how are you going to run block, pass block, all the stuff you need contact for, and how's this going to affect teams? Do you think it's going to affect the teams in any way preparing for games?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we had Gary Patterson when he came in there, and he was asked posed that same question, talking about the plays and stuff like that, and he said, he's been running it like that since he's been there at TCU. And you see TCU, they're a big physical team, and they like to come after you and get at you, and you would think they would have more physical practices than they do, but they use their physicality, like he said, in the spring. Yes. And then they transfer over and hope that transfers over into the fall. It's a good question to see, and that's something we'll have to see.
Maybe with these spread offenses in the Big 12, I mean, maybe that kind of helps them out. Maybe get some fresh legs, can run around a little bit more, maybe less contact during these days, maybe have the players feel a little bit more fresh and energized for Saturday. Maybe that's why people like Gary Patterson, probably one of the best coaches in the Big 12, has been doing something like this for the past few years. And it's obviously been proven to be a success.
Right, correct. And then, another topic that's come in here that's been talked about here is the big elephant in the room that wasn't about concussion protocol. It was about the Big 12 and expansion with the Big 12. We know it's not going to happen again this year. We know there's not going to be a title game, so maybe that same stuff's going to happen. Yep. But if we look at the schedules we have this year instead of last year, we looked at TCU. They were placed 7th going into the Big 12 last year, but they ended up coming up and running it, and then we go co-champions with Baylor. Their schedule was very front-end loaded for them last year. This year it's very back-end loaded for them. Do you think that's going to help them when it comes forward, or Baylor even for that fact, going forward with the committee when things come
I think it's definitely going to help them. Definitely going to help them. Because, I mean, you saw, their last game of the year, they won 54-0, basically, with the final scores against Iowa State. And, they got voted out.
3, I think.
Yeah, anyways, they beat the crap out of them. But now, coming out to the end of the year, you got November 27th, you're going to have Baylor. I mean, that's definitely going to help either team right there. Right there at the last game of the regular season.
Well, that's the thing. It's the last game for TCU. Because TCU is going to go up to Manhattan, take the trip up to the hostile atmosphere in Manhattan. Which, Kansas State probably won't have that good of a team this year. But, you never know when it's like
you can never count out Coach Snyder.
Yeah, you can't count him out. But then you've got them coming back home on the Friday after Thanksgiving to play Baylor at Amon Carter Stadium, which ends the season for TCU. But then the next week, Baylor has to go down to Waco and play the University of Texas in their last game of the season. So it'll be an interesting dynamic to see what happens with that coming out of there. Now, when we look at the Big 12 and the way teams are going to finish and everything, what are your top 3 teams going 3-1 that you would have in the finishing order?
I say you have to have TCU number 1 right now, just because of the pure fact of Trevon Boykin. I mean, he's going to be a Heisman finalist right now, predicted as a Heisman finalist. And Baylor is returning Seth Russell, but they lost Bryce Petty. I mean, there's no big question marks about what even Seth Russell is going to provide for Baylor. And then after that, a toss-up for number 3. You could go maybe OU Texas, Texas OU, throw in Oklahoma State in there, but you never know what's going to come out of those 3 teams.
Do you really think Texas has a shot to be the number 3 team in this conference?
Oh, I think they got definitely a shot.
I mean, it looks like they're going to be starting 2 freshmen at linebacker. They've lost Malik Brown. The question is, who's going to be their quarterback?
Swoops has definitely got to develop as throwing the ball downfield. He obviously showed nothing of that last year. That's definitely a question mark. They got a good running game. They got a good solid defense with their defensive line and secondary. I mean, but it's got to be Swoops. It's got to step up. But, I mean, anything can happen in this conference, as we saw last year with TCU making the jump. And Texas definitely got some athletes and definitely done some good recruiting like they always do. They could definitely make the jump.
Well, the team I look at to be a surprise here in this Big 12 this year is going to be the Oklahoma State Cowboys. And for the simple reason that I see them is they were in a rebuilding year, of course, last year.
Yes.
But at the end of the year with that game we had down there in Waco where we saw Mason Rudolph come in there, he ended up the season in the last 3 games going 2 for 1.
Right?
A true freshman, correct. But of course, he did get the help in Bedlam with the Tariq Hill punt return that helped them win that game there. But you got to realize something. Baylor, TCU and all Oklahoma, all three have to go through Stillwater to do something.
Yep.
So do you think that the Cowboys will play a pivotal role, such as West Virginia did last year in the claiming of the Big 12 title?
Oh, of course, Stillwater's a tough place to play. You can ask OU back in the early 2000s when they lost national championship appearances just for losing in Stillwater, and Oklahoma State wasn't even ranked. So I think definitely with this year, with them returning Randolph as a quarterback, get a little more experience under their belts, I think they definitely can be a huge factor later on down the road, and maybe throw a monkey wrench into some of these teams, national championship hopes, especially TCU and Baylor.
All right. And now, usually we would stop with everything for you here, but this is going to be our inaugural show for our Mustard Slinger Sports YouTube channel here. And so the next topic we're going to talk about is the golf tournament that finished today, which was the British Open. Mm-hmm. Spieth, he made a good run. He finished one shot out of the playoff between Mark Leachman and Zach Johnson, which was eventually won. And Louis Oosthuizen was in that playoff too. It was eventually won by Zach Johnson. Any comments you want to make about the play during the British Open, I guess?
Well, I think it's one of the best British Opens we've seen in a while. You had a whole bunch of top-name guys up there. Also, Jason Day, Sergio Garcia made a late run. The amateurs you had coming up. There was a lot of exciting players out there watching, and you had, 27 players in the top three slots all tied, the top three there at one moment. Can't get any better golf than that, really, especially on the final round of a major.
But when you look at that and you see Spieth chasing history, trying to become the first person since Ben Hogan in '53 to win the first three majors of the year. Another interesting fact was Dunn, the amateur from University of Alabama, Birmingham, when he led after 54 holes, was the first amateur to lead the British Open since 1927, and Bobby Jones. So there's a lot of history that's going on there. But do you think that there's going to be any clout that comes over this championship because of the play that they had them take on Saturday? Do you think anything would have changed if they wouldn't have had them play on Saturday, had them come out in the afternoon like they did and finish that? Do you think that's something that's going to be talked about, or do you think that's just going to be like it's British Open, that's part of it?
That's British Open, that's part of it. You've seen this in years past. You can't even mark a ball on time. Sometimes the ball blows off the green. I think that's just something that happens. You always talk about the wind at the British Open, and it seems like every year it is a huge factor. And I don't think that's going to be a huge cloud at all to talk about.
Well, that's something I thought that I figured it would have played a little bit more into Spieth's hands with the wind and stuff, especially growing up here in Texas and having to master that knockdown shot that you do when you play here in Texas in this prevailing wind that's either north or south, depending on what time of the year it is.
Yes.
You do have to master that knockdown shot to play golf here and everything. Next thing we're going to talk about is probably going to be the Texas Rangers. This is a team that looks like they're kind of in disarray here. And we've got another, I'd say, 10 days until the trade deadline comes up here.
Stick it up.
The question is, are they going to be buyers or are they going to be sellers?
Gosh, right now they're sitting 7.5 games out of first place. They're definitely, I think they'll be buyers to set themselves up for next year. Maybe not definitely get a Cole Hamels, but maybe fill in another back of the end rotation guy, or maybe get rid of these left-handed bats in the outfield. No one's going to take Chu's contract. It's so massive, and he's not even producing. He's not even batting .240 right now. But I think they're going to do something, try to make a move to set themselves up for next year, for when they're healthier, and can maybe get some more right-handed bats in this lineup.
Yeah, and these guys tried to make their moves to do something, I don't know if the move to get Josh back was to help try to put fans in the seats, or if they thought he could actually come in and be productive and do something.
At that price, why couldn't you not make that move?
You
basically got him for free. Why not try
it? You basically did. You got him for the minimum that you could have there. But the injuries seem to be a problem. And do we think that's going to be a problem with him going forward? Or
of course it will. Look at his track history. Even when some of his glory days as a Ranger, it'd be a hamstring or a groin or my eyes are too blue. It's always something with him. It's gonna keep popping up. Something will.
Popping up like an energy drink?
Yes, exactly, or an energy drink.
Well, on some other hands, though, they did get Martin Perez to come back and pitch a game on Saturday, which he didn't do too well in that outing for him. But it's just tricky when you come back from this Tommy John surgery. You've got Darvish. He's going to be facing this same thing coming back and everything. Do you think he will be the same pitcher going forward that he has been, or do you think he will have to go more into that finesse role?
It's scary because when you look at what happened to Tali Felice, he never was the same pitcher ever again coming back off Tommy John surgery. Perez only had one start. We really don't know the full story on him. So for Rangers' short history right now for Tommy John surgery, it's kind of scary. We don't know what to expect. But I won't expect to see Darvish come back to full form really until about, I'd say, the year after next. You'll get another year of development, getting his arm strength back up and having more innings, and then we can finally see maybe Darvish be dominant again as we were just last year.
Now you're more of the basketball guru that's here on this side and everything. Anything you want to say about the Mavericks? What happened with them?
What's there not to say? You think you're locking up a a major center down there at DeAndre Jordan, and he just basically changes his mind on you. I mean, what can you do?
In the
And
13th
Mavericks
hour, right.
just basically right now we're just throwing up prayers, making phone calls, just seeing what they can do to piece together in some kind of competitive team. You definitely don't want to tank when you have a guy like Dirk Nowitzki, who's done all that he has done for Dallas. 14 straight playoff appearances, or 15, don't know off the top of my head right now. You don't just want to tank when you got a guy who's at the end of his career and maybe only has 2 or 3 more years. You went out last year, got a big fish in Chandler Parsons. You want him to be a bigger part of this offense now. He can run point forward. Offense goes through him. You dig out Wesley Matthews also coming out, number 2 guard. They
Yes.
have. Not bad, but you definitely need some help down low. And this team is not really competitive right now. At best, I'd maybe put them at an 8 or a 7th seed. And don't be surprised if they miss out on the playoffs.
If this team does tank and it starts to happen where they're going down, do you see Dirk leaving this team at all?
I don't see Dirk leaving. I see maybe Cuban and Donnie Nelson opening up to maybe trading him away to a contender if he wants. Having the discussion, Dirk has a no trade clause, but I don't see Dirk leaving. I don't see Dirk doing that just to be like, hey, I want to come off the bench for, I don't know, let's say the Heat or the Thunder and see if I can give me another ring. No, I don't see him doing that.
Well, the irony in all that whole thing is that when everything happened with DeAndre Jordan and Cuban turned around the next day to talk about it, which was against the league rules, ended up getting fined quite a bit of money for talking about it, and he didn't end up coming here. I know that's going to set up stuff. I don't think, to tell you the truth, I think this will be worse than Chandler Parsons. Houston is dirty for next year. I think this is going to kind of set that stuff off. Anything you want to say in closing before we get out of here?
I don't know, other than to look for, who knows what we're going to get out of this Big 12 this year. I mean, we looked at it last year, you thought OU was going to win the Big 12 and maybe be a national championship, and they finished the year unranked, and now everyone's predicting TCU and Baylor to be right there and finishing in the top 10. Who knows what's going to happen? You may have someone like Oklahoma State sneak up, may have Texas, may actually have some good quarterback play and surprise some people, or maybe OU will show up for once and Trevor Knight will step up as a quarterback. A lot of big question marks, and there's no telling what's going to happen.
I can guarantee you one thing. Probably the most exciting thing that's going to come out of Lawrence this year will be those new helmets for the Jayhawks.
Yes.
All right. I'm James again. This is Steve. We're Muster Slinger Sports. This is our inaugural weekly show. Check in back for us next week. We'll have another show for you to talk about the latest in sports and everything else. Also, too, look for more coverage of Day 2 of the Big 12 Media Days coming tomorrow. Tomorrow will be a front-loaded day with everybody. We're going to have Baylor, University of Texas, and Oklahoma. 3 of the powerhouses in this conference will be here tomorrow, so look for a lot of coverage from that. Until next time, we'll see you later.